Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this talk. So basically, I'm going to, just like Daniela mentioned, I'm going to talk a bit about my journey from West to Southern Africa and back to Central and West Africa. And so many things has happened, but I'm going to try and share a few key stories that could give you a good insight onto this journey and how exciting it's been for me so far. And I'm going to start with a little map of Africa to give you a bit of an idea of some of the countries I'm going to be referring to. So I am from Côte d'Ivoire, from Ivory Coast, and this is where I'm actually talking to you from at the moment. And this is where I grew up. And growing up, all those countries that you will see in green are countries that I've been through. And growing up, I would have explored a bit of Mali, I would have explored a bit of Benin, and then my journey took me all the way down to South Africa, and I slowly started to make my way back to Zambia, seen a bit of Botswana in the way, and then a big leap to Congo again, Central Africa, only to come back now to Côte d'Ivoire. And why have I put countries in orange? Because if you keep on following me in the next 5 years, these would be the countries that will be also have been well explored by myself, so just a quick one. In gray, countries that I do not want to visit yet, and for other reasons, I'm sure Rod will know why. All right. So where does my journey start? My journey starts in Côte d'Ivoire, in Ivory Coast, right in the center of the country. And it starts when I was actually 8 years old, and it starts with this river that is called the Nzi River. And when I was young, basically, what happened is that I would go out in the bush with my family and my father. My father is actually the one that introduced me to this world, and would go out fishing. And there's lots of good fish actually inside this river. There's lots of catfish, and there's actually a fish that we call capitaine, which is the Nile perch, and would love to go, you know, spend the day out there fishing. And I want to describe this river and what happened around it as my very first encounter with nature. My very first, let's say, let's put it in a way like this, dangerous encounter with nature. And let me tell you why. Now, within these parts of Africa, there is a little insect that we call the driver ants. There are many different species of driver ants, but they're actually well spread throughout Southern Africa all the way up to Asia, but they love to live in the tropics. So there are numerous in the tropics. And my very first encounter in nature, one day we were out there fishing and we were about to make our way back to town, and we had rented a bit of a minibus to get there. And as we were making our way back, and we caught a bit of fish, and you can see there's a little bit of river and forest along the way to trying to get back to our car. And now we come across this carpet of ants, because those driver ants tend to move in carpets. In fact, they can be so numerous whenever they're out there hunting in carpets, or actually just moving the colony, that whenever they go through a village and it's at night and they surprise the village, the whole village will have to evacuate. The reason why is that they're actually small ants, about a centimeter and a half to 2 centimeters for the big soldiers. But the thing with those ants is they actually have very big mandibles. And when they bite you, they can take a chunk of your body out. And at the time, 8-year-old me didn't know anything about that. So as we were making our way back up to the car, I see my family going around. I see, you know, the trackers, and my father telling me, let's avoid those ants, let's go around, And I'm thinking, nah, the easy way is across those ants. I'm just going to jump across those ants because I'm tough. And I did so. And I got to the car, nothing happened to me. I thought I was brave, but in that car, there was a lot of bees because we had a lot of fish. And eventually a bee came to me, and I was a bit irritated, and sorry for my English, but I kind of smacked the bee And as I did that, I got stung. Well, I thought I was getting stung by bees, but what happened is that I was actually being bitten by ants. What happened is that the ants grabbed onto the shoes of mine and started climbing onto my body and did nothing until they were all the way up to my belly. And when they started biting, ooh la la. And what was interesting then is that it kind of triggered an interest. It kind of triggered something in me, that it triggered curiosity, because I just didn't know what had happened to me. I thought I was getting stung by bees, but it was actually ants. And it almost put me out of the bush then. When I got stung like this, and there was, I'm telling you, bleeding in parts of myself. I was like, no way. I had to strip all the way down to try to remove the ants from myself. And I thought to myself, I'm never going back to the bush. And yet, this is what triggered my curiosity to the bush. And later on, I got to start to read stories about hunters back in the days that would go, out hunting in parts of Côte d'Ivoire, in Burkina, and in Mali, and some of the places that I'd explored, that I had started then to learn more about. And I just want to say that through books as well, and my passion started to arise. And I would encourage any of you to read a lot of books, because education is found within books. All right. And then we take a big leap from Côte d'Ivoire all the way to South Africa. 10 years later, 18-year-old me getting into South Africa. And why so? Because I always knew what I wanted to do in life. And that was then work in the bush. I wanted to work in the bush no matter what. I was ready to do anything out there to work in the bush. And it wasn't easy for my family to understand that, but eventually, because they are passionate about the bush as well, I eventually managed to convince them and managed to have the support for them to get me to South Africa so I can do my training there. And when I arrived, I went through various schools. I did a course at Demling, game ranging and lodge management. Anyway, I did various courses, but the one that marked me the most probably was from a school that is called Eco Training. And in fact, that's where I've met Daniela, who introduced me at the beginning, Daniela and Eddie. And this course was, for me, it was a life-changing experience, because not only I learned a lot about the bush, but also I managed to get to a place in life that I never thought I would be able to get to. When I arrived there, I was literally almost nothing, and got to become a guide, but also got to become a walking guide, a trails guide, which changed my way of seeing things. Because for me, the conception of guiding was always in a car, was always going out to see animals in a car. And my passion was triggered by walking. I always enjoyed tracking things and being able to find them at the end and be able to take a picture of what you're tracking was always my interest. And I met this incredible guy, which then was my mentor at the time, which is Bruce Lawson, and literally took me under his wing and said, okay, why don't you come and be my backup for 6 months? So basically working with him in one of what I describe as the most special place in South Africa, which is for me, the very north of Kruger Park, which is this concession that is called the Makeleki concession. It's just an amazing area. Before getting up there, I had seen other parts of South Africa and other parts of Kruger Park itself. But when I got to the Makeleki concession, it was just an amazing place, a stunning place. And one of the things that marked my mind was those fever tree forests. Fever tree, it's a big acacia, big yellow acacia tree. And when there's a forest of them and you're at the bottom of it, it's like you're in a fairy tale. And especially when you're encountering elephants at the bottom of it, or breeding herds of buffaloes, it's just something out of this world. And that was my introduction to guiding and to walking amongst dangerous animals, to walking amongst, apart from ants and bees, to walking with lions and rhinos and you name it, But that was my very first introduction to walking to dangerous animals and wild areas, wild environments, remote places. And that's always what my heart was linked to wild places, you know. And what happened there at the Makaleki concession is that later on, I worked in the Congo, as you will see further down my talk, but my Congo fever started then. It's in this place that my Congo fever started. Not only because I had heard about a project that was about to you know, happen in Congo, that was going to take place in Congo, but there was this huge thunderstorms whenever it was the rainy season in the Makaleki concession that would you know, wake you up at night, and you know, you hear the thunder, and you know, I had dreams about exploring the jungles through, you know, swamp forests and, you know, mud and so on, and that also triggered my curiosity and quest to look more of remote wilderness, you know, to look for something wilder that I had seen. And for me, Makaleki concession in South Africa was already one of the wildest places, especially by the fact that we're also by what we call the Kruger Corner, so right by the Limpopo River. You know, we're in South Africa, but if you go across the Limpopo, you get Zimbabwe and you get Mozambique on the other side. So quite a unique place and unique ecosystem. All right, and you can see as a very younger me, you'll see different stages of me during this talk. All right, so after South Africa, like mentioned, I was looking for something wilder, much more remote, and somehow I got attracted to Zambia. Zambia just was on my mind. There was something about this country that I just wanted to explore, because for me, it was like the next step. When I did my research about what to do after my training, Zambia for me was almost like a bit of an unknown. And I'm talking about, you know, we're talking about 10 years ago. You know, there wasn't much communication about Zambia and what was really taking place there. You know, and I just was attracted to that. And luckily, I managed to find my way there, to make my way there to Zambia, and in fact, joining a big company that's called Wilderness Safaris, and I did a season out there in Zambia. I spent a month in South Luangwa and a season in the Kafue, which is a very short season, and in the Busanga Plains, and it just opened my mind to you know, the different opportunities that, you know, the wilderness can offer. And you know, in Zambia, being a foreigner in Zambia, I could not work there as a guide because you have to be a local to be able to be a guide there. So I actually did a lot more management and assisting in management. And we used to operate this hot air balloon safaris, just like you can see in that picture, just above the Busanga Plains. And it opened my mind to, you know, how many or how much wild places that are still out there in Africa, and I just wanted to see more of it. You know, it was the start of a long journey. And one thing that Zambia did for me as well, it's that it opened my mind to the connectivity between conservation and community, because one doesn't go without the other, and that's very important to be able to preserve the culture, to preserve, you know, the people living around those wild areas and wild places. You know, they're all part of the ecosystem. And that's a big message that I got, a big lesson that I got to learn from Zambia, this wild country. And then from Zambia, little did I know, well, I quickly found out that the guys that were actually kind of in charge of me in Zambia and in charge of my directors, if you want, in other words, in Zambia, they were actually part of this project that was going to happen in Congo. They were actually part of the development project that was going to happen in Congo. And one day when I, you know, rocked up in the head office in Zambia in Lusaka and got to chat with the guys and talking about my career and what I wanted to do in life, and they're like, well, we're the ones that are going to be working in Congo. Are you interested? We see that you are French speaking. You know, would you be interested? And I'm like, of course I would be. This has been my dream, of course. Little did I know that there was nothing literally in Congo. There was nothing. There was no lodges, nothing. So it was a journey into the true wilderness that I was about to embark on. And you can see on the screen now, there's a picture of a car that's about to actually cross a river, a car that's actually on a ferry. And we're about, as soon as we cross this river, we're literally getting into a national park, which is Godzilla National Park. Now, Godzilla is about 900 kilometers away from Brazzaville, which is the capital. So when you take an international flight and you land in Brazzaville, you have to make your way up all the way to Godzilla. And let me tell you that 10 years ago, this 900 kilometers, about half of it was a dirt road, which made it, of course, much more interesting. But the only thing with it is that it will take you about 14 hours or 16 hours only to get to the park. And most of the times, you know that you would get stuck. You just didn't know how many times you would get stuck before arriving to the park. And that's how remote this place is. That's how access was difficult at the time then. And I spent quite a lot of time in Godzilla, so you will see that I'll have a few stories about Godzilla because, in fact, Chris likes to joke and say that I grew up in Godzilla, which is probably part of it is actually true because I've spent about 7 years in Godzilla, and for me it was like a soul healing place. I describe Godzilla as a place that heals souls, and I really believe in it. And definitely lots of lessons that has been learned in Godzilla. All right. Now, so we've switched to a southern environment, to a savanna environment, now up to a Central Africa environment, to the Congo Basin, to the forest, and especially the Marantesi forest. And my very first introduction to the forest, I will never forget getting into the Congo. We made this journey all the way up to the park, and as we did so, our very first thing to do there was to actually go and meet the gorilla researchers which we were going to be working with. And Magda is following us tonight. And I remember something that happened when I got to see those researchers. And I've been told that they're Spanish, they're Catalan, sorry, Magda, they're Catalan. And Catalan people, you know, when they speak, they like to use their hands. They like to, you know, they're very alive people. And when I first got there to their camp, I remember them being very gentle, very, not moving too much, you know, not making any sudden movements. And I never really understood why until I got closer to them. Now, when I did, I realized that they were swamped by bees because they were living in the middle of this Marantesi forest. And then when you get a lot of water around, food resources around, nice and smelly food on the fire, well, you're gonna attract a lot of bees. And not only the African honeybee, but also the sweat bees. Sweat bees, it's a small little, tiny little bee that is stingless, just like the Mopane bee, for those that would know. And I was just amazed by the amount of bees that I could see around them. And it was such a good thing for me to actually see that, because I was like, wow, now we're talking, now this is the real deal. And I was actually looking very much forward to getting into the forest. Why? Because I thought I would get away from those bees in the forest. Little did I know that getting into the forest, you would get exposed even furthermore, just like you can see in these pictures, to those bees. And all those bees, there's those little sweat bees, they're attracted to, you know, the moisture on your body. So the moisture in your eyes, the sweat on your body. So basically what they do is they collect your sweat and they make a very nice honey out of it. And this picture was actually taken from a gorilla tracking experience. As you can see, we started wearing masks way before COVID. And yeah, lots of bees around. So this was quite an introduction for me to the forest, you know. And in fact, this top picture is got, because I've got a lot of stories and experience that I share with Godzilla discovery camps. So those camps that are operating within this national park, which is Godzilla. And in fact, here you can see Magdalena, so the gorilla researcher with myself and a friend, and we're basically discussing actually having to remove an original building site to where it currently is, just because of, you know, how I could understand our ways of saying nature. We had a link straight away as soon as we started, you know, talking. We kind of, there was a connection that happened there, and you know, obviously, it then helped build better relations in the future and better camps, better located camps. Okay. So, Congo. Whenever everyone hears about Congo, the Congo Basin, everybody's thinking about gorillas. And here we can see the Western lowland gorillas. But there are many other gorillas that you can see, the mountain gorillas, the cross river gorilla that's recently been seen in Nigeria. There are many other gorillas, but the main one in Godzilla, well, the only one in Godzilla National Park are the Western lowland gorillas. And it's a big draw card, I want to say, for everyone that hears about Congo. But let me tell you that it actually wasn't for me. Like I mentioned to you earlier, for me, the gorillas were just a bonus. It was just a bonus to the whole thing. But what I was looking forward to was the whole experience. It was the jungle, it was the remoteness, it was the adventure, it was the expeditions, you know, that's what I was looking for. But of course, when I arrived there, the gorillas were a bonus. And now we can actually see in this picture, a nice picture of a silverback from one of the habituated groups that Magda is working with, right in the middle of Marantesi. Marantesi are those 2 to 3 tall meter plants that you can see surrounding this gorilla. And because they are the predominant vegetation in most of Godzilla, actually, we would then call those forests to be a Marantesi forest. But those gorillas are not only seen in those thick vegetation, they can also be seen climbing trees, just like you see this youngster. And I'll tell you, just because there's lots of fruiting trees within this forest, those gorillas, just like this big 150-kilo silverback, can easily climb trees to try to get to some of the most favored fruits that they have out there. It is impressive, and it is an amazing experience to be able to do, to be able to work with gorillas, see gorillas from a good distance. And yeah, we say that they are habituated animals, but they're still wild animals. They're only tolerant to the human presence. And just to give you a bit of an idea of, you know, what is the Marantesi forest like? When you're right in the middle of it, that's what it looks like, you know. These 2 to 3 tall meter plants that you're seeing on the side, and you've got a slightly younger me with a bit more hair, busy talking with guests and sharing my interest into the smaller things out there in nature. And you've got one of the master trackers out of the Congo Basin right here, Zephyrin, that was with us as well at the time. And that's just to give you a bit of an idea of what it is like to be walking on those trails in the middle of nowhere. And in fact, while we're talking about gorillas, let me tell you that my most amazing and interesting experience, encounter with gorilla, actually wasn't with an habituated group. It was literally walking on one of those trails in the middle of the forest and having to listen to a silverback challenging another silverback for his families. What is the composure of a gorilla group? You get one silverback, you get a few females, and you get a few youngsters. And then you get a lot of solitary silverbacks that will try to get females from the one silverback that's got a decent group with many females. And I stumbled while doing a forest walk in the middle of a fight between 2 silverbacks. And it was impressive, you know, to be able to hear the sounds, you know, the competitive sounds. What they would do is they will kind of hoop to each other, you know, and then do a bit of chest beating, just like you would have heard about. And it sounds just like this. That's a gorilla chest beat. I hope that you heard it nicely, but anyway. And then it was just a fascinating moment. And I was with 4 guests out there, and then the guests were, they literally, what happened is that we were on the trail, and we could see part of that trail, and part of that trail was open, and we could pick up, some of the gorillas moving across and the shuffling, moving around, and eventually at some stage, the one gorilla, the one solitary silverback, parked himself on the open trail, probably about 15 meters away from us, and just stood there for about 2 minutes and looked back at us. It was a moment where obviously got my guests to freeze and not move, but my heart just melted with excitement there. So Godzilla, I've been to, so just like I mentioned to you, Godzilla, I was there when, there was almost nothing, and I was involved in the building of tree camps, which was a fantastic experience for me, to be, as a young guide, to be able to get to a place and to see it grow, and to be able to then operate within this place, and, to go from, guide to head guide to manager there, and to, it's just an amazing feeling, and there's a sense of, almost ownership that you kind of, grow into one's mind, and that's what happened with Godzilla, And the fact that I was speaking French obviously was an advantage to me, because then when we were in the middle of nowhere with these guys, and we were working with South Africans and Zimbabweans and helping to build the camps, then I could help a lot with the translation, with the leading teams and so on. But one of the interesting things that happened during this whole building and construction part of the camps was the actual exploration part of it. Because being one of the very first guide out there, along with Fraser Gill, another great, awesome, great forest guide, and also mentor, we had a playground to ourselves that we could literally, operate in and explore, and trying to create these activities that are now available to guests out there. So, and it was probably the best time that I've spent in Godzilla. Now, Godzilla is well known for one particular thing, and that's what we call buys. This camp that you were seeing being constructed is now this camp that you can see along the side here. And this open place here is actually what we call a buy. It is a window to the forest where a lot of the secretive animals that are living within this forest would come out to try to collect the salts and minerals, especially sodium and calcium. But all this marsh and this aquatic vegetation will be full of those minerals and will be delicious for a lot of those animals as well, And this will be a place where you'll have a lot of forest elephant activity, a lot of forest buffalo activity, colobus will come there, bongos will come there, hogs, some of the most special and difficult to see animals that we get within Africa would come to those openings in the middle of the forest so that they can be viewed. And all these thin, tall, white trees that you're seeing all around, this is swamp forest. Now, this is ideal habitat to explore in when you know what you're doing. Otherwise, it can be very dangerous. When you've got mud all the way to your waist and you cannot put your knee above ground, it starts to be a bit problematic, I tell you. All right. And exploring these buys. So how would one get to see a forest animal? Forest animals are very shy animals. Well, we think they're shy, but the reality is that they tend to be moving much more when it's cooler out there, because in these parts of Africa, it can be quite hot during the middle of the days. So they will tend to be moving very early in the mornings and very late during the day, just before it gets dark, and also, of course, during the night, which is the reason why you will get more activity in these times of the day. And you can see here, there's a troop of colobus monkeys slowly waking up during a sunrise, and parrots and pigeons flying above, and you get a forest buffalo in the mist, and an elephant in the mist. And what's interesting about, you know, exploring these bars is that there's no driving. There's no 4x4s. You have to be walking. You have to walk out there. And this what makes it unique. And this connects you directly to the environment, to the animals, and to nature itself. And you get to see, when you do the time, some of the most elusive animals that you get out there. Now in this picture, we have 3 bongos here. Bongo is it's the biggest forest antelope that we get in Africa. And it's probably one of the most secretive and elusive antelope as well. Now, when I came to Congo, I wanted to see bongo. I wasn't on those gorillas like I told you. Gorillas were a bonus, but that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see bongo. And I've been, you know what? I actually spent quite a few years without seeing bongos. Everyone around me had seen bongos, although I was out there exploring every day. And one day it just happened. I was in the shower with soap all around me, all over. And then somebody screamed, "Call, bongo in the bay." Bongo in the bay, bongo in the bay. And there I was out to see these majestic antelopes. Oh, such beauties. The males can go all the way up to 400 kilos, just to tell you how big they can get. They've got these beautiful spiraled horns because they are part of the Tragelaphus family, so part of the Kudu, the Nyana family. And they've got just like this beautiful mask that you can see on their face, just stunning. And in fact, it is one of the only species of antelopes where the females would have horns as well. And these are actually females and youngsters, because the male, if there was a male there, oh, you would know. A part of, I suspect this guy perhaps to be a young male, but if there was a big male out there, you would know, trust me. And another very special animal that we get in the Congo is the giant forest hog. Now, I'm sure that many of you out there didn't know about giant forest hog before. This is how rare this animal is, just to tell you. This is how rare and special they are. And it's such a difficult animal to see, but bars, again, these openings in the heart of the forest are a very good opportunity to be able to see them. So when we started in Godzilla and I had a lot of time exploring, what I would do is I would park myself in one of the bars and just wait and see, hoping to see one of those special animals. And in fact, that's exactly how I got to see this hog. I was parked for 6 hours on the side of this bar, not moving, waiting to see what was going to happen. And when I started, there was nothing in the bar. And eventually a breeding herd of buffalo came through. They started grazing a little bit. They parked themselves in the water. And the next thing you know, you've got a group of giant forest hog that just came out, running out of nowhere, that surprised all of us, the buffaloes and me. And it was just impressive to be able to witness that. And just, that's a forest buffalo at the back, eh? Forest buffalo different to the Cape buffalo, as you can see, much more red in color, slightly smaller, horn shape different, not as big. You know, big males about half a ton, but still, look at the size of this hog next to these buffaloes, eh? Impressive, I would say. Guiding in the forest environment. Like I mentioned to you, forget about 4x4s, forget about Landis and, you know, Land Cruisers, you know. If we do use them, then we only use them to get you from one place to the other. But if you want to see the animals out there, if you want to see the birds, you want to see the monkeys, you want to be exposed to the wildlife, you get to be on your kayak, on the boat, you get to be on foot, and you get to be walking within the swamp forest, within the savannas, within this, you know, diversity of habitat that those forests allow you to see. Just like you can see here, kayaking, and you've got this beautiful communal web spider here that you can see hanging on the side. Here I've got my brother Alan Cassidy, and we were busy training some young guides because we quickly figured out that, you know, operating in Southern Africa and in Central Africa, it's two completely different ways of operating. Some of the basics can be used in terms of the, the awareness and how you have to be careful when you walk to dangerous animals, but you have to adapt and you have to be stealth the whole time whenever you're walking out there. You have to be walking on tiptoes as if you're moving across a carpet of ants. And one thing that I do want to point out as well, it's that as I'm speaking to you out there, I believe that I'm not only speaking to young male rangers, but also to young female rangers. And you can see in these pictures that we have a few female guides out there that have come to these places as tough as they can sound, and they've made it fine. As you can see in this picture, we got another guide, Alice, and we got brother Eddie here that's busy guiding guests next to a breeding herd of buffalo. Now, people that will see this picture will be, especially the ones that are used to walking to big games, they will be like, what's happening here? Why are they walking next to these buffaloes and not on this green patch here? Well, if they were to step on this green patch, it would only be mud all the way to their knees. And because there is a little bit of a waterway right where they're walking, they have to walk there. They have no other ways to get past those buffaloes. And of course, because those buffaloes are forest animals and you've got the forest at the back, the forest is their escape route. In fact, what happened later on is that those buffaloes just gently, slowly went towards the edge of the forest, continued grazing, they weren't bothered, and it carried on. All right. And this is what guiding is all about. Guiding is about, trying to have an understanding of nature and bringing this understanding to whoever is interested in it. We as guides have to be able to understand nature and translate it to whoever is interested. And it can be many things. Some of you young rangers out there, you can pick, yes, an area that you want to be, very good at, or you want to be, specialized in one sector. But in general, a good guide has to have a broad understanding of every little aspect of the ecosystem or the biotope that is busy operating within, because it's a combination of everything that makes it work. One doesn't work without the other. All right. And talking about understanding nature, talking about spending time understanding the behavior of animals leads me to understanding also how to understand the behavior of, other animals like forest elephants and so on. You have to do the time out there. You have to be out there most of the time, and actually not just with guests, but by yourself. You have to do a bit of time by yourself to walk and to try to, I don't want to say test yourself, but to see, how well do you understand a species. In this case, for example, I want to talk about forest elephant, and I want to talk about a story that happened with two of other fellow guides as we're walking from one camp to the other. We were walking into this, a bit of a swamp forest, lots of trees around. And when you walk in a forest, not only you have to be stealth, but you have to be very aware. You have to be able to hear things before they actually hear you. And that's the trick. You have to be aware at all times. Otherwise, you will get very close to some of the potential dangerous animals like elephants or buffaloes. And the one day, we were walking from one camp to the other, and I was front of the line. We had heard the elephants within the forest. We knew as we were walking within this forest that there was an elephant. And then we said, okay, let's get closer and let's try to investigate to see how close this elephant is, to see whether it's a breeding herd, whether, what's happening with this elephant. Is it a lone bull? Is it, we're just curious. We want to know more about this elephant. As we get closer to the noise, there is we basically following a bit of a game trail, of an elephant trail that's been opened through time. And there's a bit of a turn to this trail, and this turn leads us to the noise. But as soon as we turned, interestingly enough, and I kid you not, about literally 3 meters away from me, there was an elephant, and I was literally seeing right through his eyes, which means the elephant had my size, so I could look into his eyes and he could look into mine, which then sparked my worry. I'm like, okay, there's a young elephant here. So imagine what else there is around. And of course, if it's a young elephant, there will be money around. We understood at this stage that we were surrounded by a breeding herd of elephants, and there were other individuals that we couldn't even hear out there. And yet, we were facing these youngsters. Obviously, I turned around and let my other fellow guides know that we needed to move away. I didn't say anything. They could pick up everything by my face. Visuals were pretty clear. Let's get out of here. And which we did on tiptoes, you know, not rushing out because you never do. And it was just an amazing experience, you know, because we then eventually sat somewhere and could just pick up the noise of this breeding herd of moose coming alive all around us. And, you know, it was an eye to eye with nature and with forest elephants. And this is what the forest is all about. This is what the Congo Basin and these forest environments are all about, you know. But they're not just about that. Often we think of the bigger things that can be dangerous. We think about the forest elephants, the buffaloes. There are also a few hyenas out there, but we forget the smaller ones, as small as ants or mosquitoes giving you malaria or Gaboon adder. And I want to share a quick story of how those two potentially deadly things I had to face those two in one. And what happened is that I've been guiding a guest for about 6 days now, and we were close to the end of this journey, and we had moved in between camps. You know, it's almost like an overlanding, you know, safari, you know, type of expeditions that would go through, you know. And you know, we had seen gorillas, we had come down to the bars and trying to see more of the wildlife out there. But now I've had malaria for about 2 days. And I know when I've got malaria. Malaria is pretty common in West and Central Africa. It's like getting a common flu. And we know what to do also when we've got malaria. We know that we have to take the treatment. You take it, and then you're down for 3 days. And after that, you recover for a bit, and then everything should be fine. But if you take the treatment, you're gonna be down. Now I've got malaria and I'm fighting this malaria for 2 days in a row because now there's no other guides available around, and I need to be able to lead my guest all the way to the end. And I knew also that I could do it, you know, so which I did. But on the very last afternoon that I had to guide him through one of the, you know, adventurous trails that we had around camp, I was started to get a bit dizzy and nauseous, but it was the last afternoon. I was like, I'm going to push it. We're going to make it. Let's do this. It took me about 5 years to see a Gaboon adder out there in the Congo. But since I did, it was like I was on a roll after that. Anyway, going back to my story, we're walking onto this trail, which, you know, various habitats, and we're going through swamp forests, and eventually there's water all the way to west level, and, you know, we've got a bit of dry forest pockets, and now we're going through a savanna pocket. And savanna out there in the Congo Basin, we're talking about vegetation that has got 2 to 3 tall meter, you know, a grass, and you can hardly see anything out there. And the only way to be able to see if you're not going to stumble into a breeding herd of elephants or buffaloes is that you actually have to climb a termite mound. When I got into one of the savanna pockets, and I was about to try to see if there was no danger around, and to be honest with you, I was a bit dizzy from the malaria. The malaria was working me hard. And as I'm about to climb, now I went through something that I'd never experienced before. I never knew how flexible the body could be and work just like a spring. Just as I was about to step onto that mound, my foot went onto this thing that just looked like dead leaves, but started moving. And I knew it was a gabonada. And automatically my foot came back to me somehow. Now I'll tell you, dizziness, nauseous, gone. Now I can see, I got a 20/20 vision and I can see what's at the bottom of this Tamat hill. And it's a beautiful gabonada. Once, you know, the scary part is gone, then obviously you get excited. Now I'm clearing vegetation, I'm clearing grass, and I want to see that thing, and I want to show it to my guests, and which we did, and we had the most beautiful moments. But just to say that out there in nature, it's not only about the bigger things, it's about the smaller things as well. And again, draws me back to how aware you need to be when you're operating in such forest environment. All right. And in fact, if you ask some of the pygmy tribes that operate within those forests, just like the Bahaka, for example, that are a little bit further up north, they will tell you that the only two things that would scare them the most within the forest, and they used to those forests because they've lived in those forests for generations, would be the gabonada and the leopards, the forest leopards, the leopards that are stealthier than the savanna leopards. That would be the two main things. Thinking about the Bahaka, there's another stage along my journey, which I was very thankful to. It was to be able to go all the way up to Central Africa. And the Bahaka are those wonderful people that you can see right here, which is one of the pygmy tribes that you will find in Central Africa. Now, going to Central Africa for me was just it was an amazing experience. It brought me back to, you know, some of the old exploring days. You know, I felt like I was Livingstone going out there to Sangaloj. And how did we get there? Because we were from Godzilla, we'll take a plane all the way to the very northern part of Congo, and then from there we'll jump on a boat on the river, which is the Sanga River, and go all the way up then to Sangaloj, to then lead you then to Zanga Sanga Special Reserve, which is a place that I describe as the most precious treasure that Africa's got. And this is Nzanga Bai. I told you about bais being openings in the heart of the forest, where you've got a lot of animals that will come through. And this is Nzanga Bai. Nzanga Bai is this amazing bai where you'll get a lot of forest elephant activity. It is just amazing, stunning. You'll get hundreds of elephants coming through, in and out, and there's so much interactivity that's happening. And you know, forest elephants will tend to move in much smaller breeding herds than their cousins would, the savanna elephants. And so whenever they come out in the open and they see other herds and they start to socialize, there's a lot of socializing that's happening within those bais, and it's just stunning. And I had only one word to describe it when I got there. It was elephantastic. Now this is how it is. It is just elephantastic. It was for me by far the best elephant experience in Africa. It is just amazing. And when you get to the bai, the walk that gets you to the bai, the swamp walk, the walking through, you know, parts of the dry forest and parts of, you know, the rivers, and you know, it's just amazing. And the closer you get to the bai, the closer you will hear rambles in the jungles. Painted elephants. You get a lot of what I call the painted elephants, and I'll come back to this picture here, because yes, out there in Nzanga Bai, you get elephants that will tend to use different color soil, color clay, in fact, that they will, you know, put onto their cells and just look as if they colorated, just as if you're going to see a bit of gold elephants, and sometimes they're red and sometimes they're gray in color. It's just amazing, amazing. There was a bit of rain here, which is the reason why its coloration was going down, but I'm sure you get the picture. Okay, and Nzanga Bai, it's not just about you know, the elephants. There's also lots of gorillas, as you can see in this picture. There's also lots of bongos that could come to Dubai at the good time of the year, which is mainly the dry seasons. You can get herds of up to 40 to 50, you know, individuals coming to Dubai. You get giant forest hog that can come to this Dubai. And it's just the place itself, the reserve itself, you know. You get some of the tallest trees I've seen in Africa there, you know, literally some of the tallest trees, you know, up to 50 to 60 meters tall, very ancient trees with big buttresses, you know, big root system. It's just amazing. And you get also, of course, the birding up there is amazing, you know, and you get the picatorti, the gray-necked picatorti, which is an amazing species of bird to see as well. Yeah. And this is Central Africa. This was Central Africa. So now I've tried to give you a few, you know, a few peek into my journey so far. And where it's leading me, it has now led me back to Côte d'Ivoire, where I am today. And now I'm back to this river that you can see here, the Nzi River, where I've started with those ants biting me. And doing a bit of horse riding safaris now and trying to get a few lodges up and running. And I'm working also on a very big project in Untitled National Park, which is what you can see around there. And we've got a big mountain where you can see the forest, you know, from that mountain. And it's just amazing. And working now with chimpanzees, with Western chimpanzees that can use up to 26 tools for some of the communities. And all my journey has now brought me back to West Africa. And this is where I am today. And this is where I'm slowly, from where I'm going to start expanding again. And if you remember at the very beginning of the presentation, I showed you those countries in orange. So I'm only coming back to go even further beyond. And this was my journey so far. Well, just an insight into it. So the road is still long, but thank you for being part of it. And the thing that I want to encourage everyone out there, and especially the youth, is that you must never give up. You know, you must always try. Trying is what got me where I am. Whenever I was challenged, you know, I would say, well, I will try, and then I will try until I succeed. And when you try once and you fail, it's not a problem. You can try again. You know, you can have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. So we learn about when we operate in the Congo. So yeah, trying and not giving up easily is what got me this far. So I would encourage everyone, whenever you challenge out there, you must try. You must try. And if I didn't put a picture with a clear blue sky and a few clouds, it's because on the road, I cannot lie to you and say that it's always going to be, you know, nice and smooth and blue skies. There can be a few storms, but if you try hard enough, you'll get through. All right, that was me, Karl Diakite. Thank you for your attention, and I hope it was an interesting talk.
Thank you, Karl, for that very inspirational and passionate talk. With your with the catchphrase, you're elephantastic. I mean, that's amazing. The experiences, your pictures, the stories. I hope one day you can write a book about it, or maybe make a movie. It would be great to see it, you know, and other people to experience it the way we have now. Thank you. Samantha. There were two questions earlier during the talk from the chat from Ty Lloyd and Justine Schwartz. Let me just find the question. The question from Ty was, have you had any experience with poachers?
Yes, I have, because unfortunately in these parts of Africa, and because of the amount of, you know, let's say forest elephants, because a lot of the poaching is mainly for ivory, also a lot of bushmeat and, you know, the gorillas as well. So yes, we have been confronted to many poaching situations. You know, it's I want to say it's part of the game. You know, we are there to preserve, but whenever we operate in such area as well, poachers will tend to then move away as well. So our presence within those areas is benefit to the animals directly, because we dare to preserve, and they know that. So yeah, definitely.
And the next question from Justine Schwartz, thank you for answering that, sorry.
No worries.
Is how do you volunteer for opportunities like this? Is there somewhere you could start to be a ranger or a guide, or did you study or learn from guides along the way?
So there are a few courses that can be done in South Africa or even in other places, like in Botswana, in Zimbabwe, to become a guide. But also, so going through a course is definitely, you'll benefit much more from that. But I want to say that a lot of the things that you will learn won't actually be specifically into the books that you will learn from. The bush itself is a lesson of life that you learn from. So whenever they're out there exploring, even if they're out fishing with their parents or doing anything out there, they must just, spark their curiosity and start learning from it.
Okay, thank you, Karl.
You're welcome.
Are there any hands, perhaps?
Can I quickly interrupt?
Okay.
Rivaldo is back in if we want to.
Okay, we're going to give it one more try.
Apologies, he just fell out again.
No, okay, then we'll let's, Maret, we will do it at one of my talks. I really would like to have Rivaldo on my talk. Like I said, there must be some energy in young people on my talk, so that will be all good. Thank you,
I'll let him
Samantha.
know. Thanks.
Luke Brittle raised his hand. Unfortunately, I can't see him.
I can see him. I'm going to unmute him.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. So yeah, it's Bridal. Sorry.
Bridal, sorry.
I just wanted to know what specific courses did you do, and what of the courses impact you the most in what you've been doing so far?
The course that impacted me the most would be a course that is called, from a school that is called Eco Training, where I did a year course to become a professional guide. And what impacted me the most out of this course was the trails part of it, was to become a trails guide. Because I mentioned earlier, just being in a vehicle or anything like this wasn't necessarily what I was looking for. I was looking for something where I could actually understand more of the wild animals that are out there, and to be able to approach them on foot, without obviously being seen. That would be the purpose, but to observe nature on foot. Yeah, and for sure to do the trails guiding part of it would be was the most benefit to me, for sure. I hope I've answered your question.
Let's see any other hands or in the chat.
Thanks, Luke. You got that.
Yes. Katharina Hecker, I'm going to unmute you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much, Karl, for a spectacular talk. I would be interested to hear more about your activities in Côte d'Ivoire. What kind of tourism activities could you advise on, or where are you guiding there?
So in terms of Côte d'Ivoire, probably the far product would be the chimpanzees. It would be, there is a park, a national park that is called Tai National Park, and which is one of the last block of forest that you've got within primary forest that you've got within the Upper Guinean environment, which is the Upper Guinean rainforest. And it's just an amazing place. It's very similar to the Congo Basin. In fact, sometimes it's even considered as, a part of it. Well, formerly was a part of it, kind of linked to it, at least the forest parts of it. And it's just amazing. I mean, the chimpanzees, the different species of monkeys you can see out there. And it's just species that are not well known because, you know, people don't hear much about them, you know. When you talk about red colobus, western red colobus, Jeffrey's colobus, you know, it's things that people don't hear often. And we get, for example, the pygmy hippo. The pygmy hippo is possible to see in Untitled National Park. We've got also picket tortoises out there. It's just an amazing place, the Thai forest. Yeah, so that's definitely the far attraction. Now, in the center of the country, we are trying to develop a few reserves and lodges, but it's not. You won't see the game that you would have in southern or eastern Africa. You won't see the same concentration of animal and so on, but it will be very much more diverse in terms of the species itself. So for a birder will have lots of fun because it will see a lot of different new species of birds. But if you're looking for, you know, lots of if it's a first, let's say if it's a first African experience, I would not say to come to our savannas, but definitely would recommend our forest for sure. And to link our forest with the Congo Basin.
Thank you, Karl. I see there's a question from Justine Swart. We're unmuting you, Justine. Just accept unmute. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. I just want to know how fulfilling is your job? How fulfilling is it? Like in terms of like the views, the animals that you get to deal with every day. How fulfilling is it?
If I can answer in saying that, well, it's what keeps me alive. There's a say that one friend told me one day. He said, you can take a ranger out of the bush, but you cannot take the bush out of him, and that's me.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
Justine, I just want to mention that I've known Karl since he was 19, even before 19. Karl went to Nzi River with your father, when you were still a boy. Karl was just one of those very quiet guys, but when he committed himself, he committed, and I can feel and hear it in his passion. So from my perspective, Karl, it was so inspiring to listen to you tonight. I thought I've never been to Godzilla, the way you have introduced it.
Thank you, Chris.
Any other questions?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Leratu, Takoli, I'm unmuting you. Oh, sure, and it was just a thumbs up. Thanks, Lerata. Thanks for the thumbs up.
Stephen Humphreys.
Okay, if you can unmute.
Steven.
Oh, Carlito. How's it going, buddy?
All good, brother Steven.
Nice, nice. Thanks for the talk. I suppose a slightly different one from my side. How do you find, after your years of working in the bush and working away from your family and loved ones for a substantial amount of time, what advice could you potentially give to younger aspiring rangers and guides on how to overcome those challenges and difficulties and how to find a good work-life balance back in the normal world, so to speak?
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen. I think it's a very interesting point and question that you're bringing up. But I would say that it's definitely a career choice. And once you make that choice, you have to know what you're getting into, and that's important. And I knew from a very young age what I was stepping into, and that helped me a lot. And you basically you have to try to find the balance between, you know, keeping in touch with the family and operating in such remote areas, and it's about just finding that right balance that will work for you and for your family as well. And so if I want to take my example in this case, so as you can see with my journey, I've started from West Africa. I went all the way down to Southern Africa. whenever I was going through all these countries to try to make my way back up, I always had the same aim in mind, which was to one day contribute to the development of ecotourism and to help preserve some of the most remote places that we still have within Western Central Africa. So, and it kind of slowly drove me back home in a way. And then when you're working in the bush but not far from home, well, it's great. It means things worked out the way it should have.
Welcome, buddy.
Thank you, Karl. I see Lerato Tukoli. Lerato, did you want to ask a question? Okay, I'm unmuting. I'm unmuting you, Lerato.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Karl, for what is really a beautiful tale and taking us through the different countries that you've worked in. And my question to you is, in the different spaces that you've been, what are the kind of support? So for instance, you mentioned that you've encountered poachers in the field, and I imagine there's different types of stresses as well beyond the types of encounters you have with potential violence. And what kind of support do guides and rangers have in the different countries that you've worked in, and not just them, but for their families as well? Can you elaborate on that? Because I think the kind of work that you do, of course, puts you in a lot of conflict, not just with the wildlife, but with people as well. And if there's different organizations that support rangers and guides in that respect.
Thank you, Lerato.
It's an interesting question, and there is a lot of support. There is a lot of support, and I want to say that there is a lot of awareness to the guiding profession and even the rangers profession, because a guide and a ranger are slightly different, although they can be put in the same category. And there is definitely a lot of support. But what I do want to say as well is that it also depends on each one of us. It depends on what change we wanting to bring about as well. And once you are passionate and dedicated to your cause and you're out there to make a change, well, eventually you will get there, and you will get the support as well to follow you to get there. So it's also about how do we stand for this support as well, and how do we prove that it's making a difference into our everyday life and what we're doing. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it does.
Okay, she gave the thumbs up. Samantha, do you have any questions in the chat?
Yes, I have a few. I have one from Jian Karim. And the question is, have you ever been attacked by an animal?
Oh, yes, I've been attacked by many animals. I've had many close calls, but I'm still here. Nature doesn't want to harm us.
Any examples?
Any example of many, plenty, lions, elephants, buffaloes, plenty, the list is long. But what we need to retain from this is that whenever we're out there, and especially when we're on foot, is that the very first, nature doesn't want to harm you, because an elephant, for example, that comes towards you knows that it could get potentially injured when it's going to come and have a direct conflict with you. So they will always trying to avoid conflicts. And it's about being able to read the situation. It's about not getting into that situation of danger. It's about being careful, avoiding, being in such positions. And sometimes it's about talking to the animals nicely and saying, hey, please, just let me pass. It works.
And the next question is from Reed Bader, or Ride Bader. Yes, he just waved. He said, what books would you recommend about guiding or birding?
About guiding or birding? So definitely already to start with all the different field guides that would be within his area of, ways. So if he's in South Africa, get the books of, bird guides of South Africa, Southern Africa, and so on. And then to be honest, in terms of literacy, in terms of actual stories, because I come from a Francophone background, my stories are more of, you know, French hunters that used to be around Ivory Coast and so on. So I do have a few names, but I don't know if there are any translations in English. I don't know if maybe in terms of good that could inspire the youth, if Rod could help me maybe with the name of a few books in Southern Africa from rangers, perhaps.
Well, if you're going to think of guiding, the first book to get is The Guide's Guide to Guiding.
Yes.
That's available in most bookshops, and that would tell you. But if you kind of get into guiding, the first thing you have to do is you have to like people. It's not about. A lot of people have a passion for animals, but if you don't like people, then go into some other form of conservation. But guiding is about people. It's not about animals.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Samantha. I am going to just make a few comments, and then we can gradually draw this to a closure.
We have one more question, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, from Rogan Abrahams. And the question is, during your years of doing what you love, have you ever had a moment where things just go downhill and you felt like just giving up?
No, not really. Yes, there were moments that were tough, and you're like, ooh, this is tough now. But those tough times are always interesting times, and it should always be taken with a laugh. I'm somebody that laughs a lot, so probably in the tough situation that I was in, and I thought I was not gonna make it, I probably laughed. And yeah, so it's a matter of, you gotta try. You gotta, if it's your dedication, it's what you want doing in life. There's no downtime. There's no, the downtime is part of the good times. It's part of the story. It's part of, the bigger picture.
Thank you very much. To all the young people who are still on, thank you for making your time available, spending your bandwidth to listen to the talk. Thank you to Kathy. I see there's another hand, Jordan. I'm going to give you a minute just now. Thanks to Kevin and Kathy for organizing the Junior Honorary Rangers to listen tonight and be part of this. Very much appreciated. Ruan and Rivaldo, sorry, we will do it next time. Obviously, Karl, Samantha, all the way from Switzerland helping us. And behind the scenes, there's Maret and Duret and Linky. It was quite a lot to organize. But one other thing I would like to just mention to all our youngsters. There are people on here tonight, and I'm just mentioning names like Magdalena Bermechel. She's a primatologist, and she also helped form Karl in his career. There's Bert van Zoest. He's the guy who built the lodges and helped form that side of his life. There's Paul Telfer, who was the CEO of the lodges and helped form that side of things. So in the process as you go, there are wonderful people who surround you and guide you and take your hand, and you learn from them whatever you can. Rod Cassidy is part of the presentation here. Rod also played a role. And so you look at those people who are your role models, and through them, I think you can learn maybe sometimes much more than you can learn from a book. So before Jordan, I'm going to give you opportunity. I just want to check Magdalena Bermejo, whether she's still on. Magdalena, here you are. I'm unmuting you. She is right in the center of Congo, in the heart of where Karl has been working. Just want to see if we can get Magda in. No, she's not there. Tamar Cassidy, Mark Gately, you knew him working there. Paul Telfer, let me see if he's around. Okay, doesn't look like it. So to all those mentors, there's Paul. I'm unmuting you, Paul.
I've just unmuted him.
Short word, Paul.
No, it's just a great pleasure to hear Karl. And Karl, you know, you're part of the team and the part of the family and the adventures that we've all had together in the Congo Basin. You just make me want to come visit you in Ivory Coast.
You should. You should.
I'm coming.
You,
trust me.
Thank you. Then Jordan, let's unmute. I'm trying to see. I saw it just now. She had her hand up. Where's that? Help me, please, if you can see her.
Oh yeah, Jordan Jones.
Can you hear me? I don't think they can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. When you went from the South African ecosystem and all the things you knew to like a completely different ecosystem, was it a big adjustment, and did your lifestyle change when you made that move?
It is a very interesting question because parts of it actually did, yes, because we had to adapt to a completely new environment. And in fact, it was very new for me. But there was a few, you know, that's why life is like a journey, because as you go along the way, you know, you've got a backpack and you just keep on picking up stuff as you go. And definitely what I did pick up when I was in South Africa and in Zambia definitely helped shape who I was when I arrived in Congo. But I had to adapt myself to the new environment and to the new lifestyle that I was getting into, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. So I think we came to a formal end, and I think at this point I can unmute all of you, and again, let's give Karl a
if I may just,
Karl.
Chris, if I may just one last word, please. I would very much like to thank, first of all, you, Chris. I'd like to thank everyone that took part of this talk, and I could not mention every name of the ones that were involved with this journey, but there's so many people out there, and they are very close to my heart. And I just want to say to everyone out there that I've not mentioned the name of, that was part of the journey, thank you very much. And the journey carries on, and I'll be waiting for you guys in Côte d'Ivoire.
Thank you, Karl Diakite. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Oh, Karl.
Go, Karl. Go. Listen to you again. Okay, we're meeting everybody. Those who want to stay in, you're welcome. You can unmute yourself. And thanks again, Samantha. We're going to do this again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Grace Kelly. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Grace. Reed Bader.
Hello, Bas van Soest. How are you doing?
Oh, wonderful, Rod. How are you? Really enjoyed the talk tonight. Brings back a lot of great memories. Carlito, you are always the king of the jungle.
Thanks, switch on your camera.
Wouldn't have been possible without you.
Oh, camera. Where is my camera? Here you go, Buzzy and technology.
You must see a guy who works in the bush, what he looks like. Look at this guy.
Yeah.
Come on, Buzzy.
You see, I need my son. There we go.
Buzzy. There he is.
I need a good guy to help me switch on the camera.
Nice to see you.
Lovely seeing you. Karl, the word is bad.
Life is a journey, and we'll keep on paddling away at it.
For sure, for sure. For sure.
Thank you, Baz.
Yeah. Lots of great memories and more to come.
For sure.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Grace Kelly, we are Grace. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It was wonderful.
I'll come and see you in Côte d'Ivoire.
Thank you, guys. Merci, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Lovely
and
seeing
Kevin,
you.
I'm just down the road.